My brother snorted. Your kid's the kind who'll flip burgers forever. His wife laughed. My son just blinked, silent. I smiled and said, and yet my kid isn't living in my basement with a maxed-out credit card. My brother froze. And then, without thinking twice, your kid's the kind who'll flip burgers forever. That's what my brother said. Right in front of everyone. Right to my face. His wife laughed like it was the punchline to a joke she'd been waiting all night to hear. Evan, my son, just blinked. Didn't flinch. Didn't say a word. We were 3 bites into dinner at my mom's house when Nathan decided to humiliate my son in front of the whole family. He always needed to crush someone to feel tall. Lately, Evan had become his favorite target. Easy prey, he thought. A quiet 19-year-old kid working the grill at a fast food joint while taking business classes at night. No flashy degree, no fancy internship, no LinkedIn bragging rights. Just a kid with a job and a plan he kept to himself. Nathan, 41, divorced until 2 years ago, now remarried to a woman who treats every family gathering like a stage. They brag about their son Dylan like he's curing cancer, but from what I know, he's burning through Nathan's credit cards faster than his weed stash and hasn't held a job longer than 3 weeks. Still, Nathan leaned back in his chair and aimed that line like a dart. Your kid's the kind who'll flip burgers forever. Evan didn't react. That was the part that made Nathan even angrier, I think. There was nothing to poke at. No outrage. Just silence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. And yet my kid isn't living in my basement with a maxed-out credit card. Nathan's face changed. You could feel it. The whole room felt it. Mom went stiff like she wanted to interrupt but didn't. Dad looked at his plate. Sherry opened her mouth, probably to say something catty, but I was already pulling something from my purse. A white envelope. I slid it across the table to my parents. What's that? My dad asked. Open it. Inside was a printed reservation for 2-3 nights at a lakefront cabin my mom had dreamed about visiting for years. Paid for in full. From Evan. Bought with the same money Nathan thought made him pathetic. My mom gasped. My dad was confused. Nathan said he bought this? Yeah. With his paycheck. And he asked them to bring back pictures. Nobody spoke after that. Sherry swirled her wine like it had answers. Dylan, their golden boy, wasn't there. Said he was too busy to come. He was probably hungover. I didn't expect Nathan to say thank you or even back down. But I saw it. That look in his eyes. He'd miscalculated. He thought Evan was weak. What he didn't know was that Evan had been working on something. Something bigger than all of us realized. And this dinner? This was just the beginning. Nathan didn't say much for the rest of that dinner. He picked at his food, avoided eye contact, barely even laughed at his own dumb jokes. Sherry tried to keep the energy up, complimented the chicken, asked if Mom had redone the drapes, but the mood had shifted. Everyone felt it. Evan, as always, stayed quiet. He helped clear the dishes, gave my mom a kiss on the cheek and left early. Said he had to be up at 5. I knew where he was going. I'd seen it with my own eyes. But I hadn't told anyone yet. Not even my parents. Not until he was ready. See, 6 months earlier, Evan had been saving most of his paychecks. He worked extra shifts, picked up delivery routes, even did freelance design work online. Every dollar went into something he kept calling the plan. I assumed it was just savings for school or a car, maybe a trip with friends. But then he asked me one night if I could co-sign a small business lease. That's when he showed me everything. Blueprints. Branding. Supply contracts. A whole business model already in motion. He wasn't flipping burgers forever. He was studying the system from the inside. He had opened his own fast food spot. Clean, modern, streamlined. Not a franchise. Fully independent. Evan hired 2 of his co-workers, offered better wages than they'd been getting, and started running the place the way he thought fast food should be. Affordable, efficient, but actually respectful to the people working there. He didn't want to talk about it until it was stable. So I kept quiet. But that dinner with Nathan lit something in him. I saw it the next day when he came home from his shift and sat at the kitchen table. He said, I think I'm ready to show everyone. I asked, you sure? He nodded. And he smiled, not to impress anyone, not to gloat. It was the kind of smile people have when they've quietly built something no one thought they could. 2 weeks later, it was my mom's birthday again. A smaller gathering this time. Just immediate family. Nathan, Sherry, Dylan, who actually showed up this time. My parents, me and Evan. Evan walked in carrying a massive bouquet and a gift box tied with a silver ribbon. Handed them both to my mom. She unwrapped it slowly. A full dinnerware set she'd mentioned years ago, the kind she never bought for herself because she always said it was too much. She asked how he managed it. He said, "I've been saving." That alone was enough to put a crack in the image Nathan had painted of him. But it wasn't the main event. Evan waited until after dinner. Everyone had moved to the living room. He cleared his throat, softly, barely above a whisper, and said he had something else to share. What he said next changed everything. It was quiet after dinner, the kind of silence that settles in when everyone's too full and trying to stay polite. Dylan was on the couch, thumbing through his phone, half listening to anyone who spoke. Sherry was swirling wine again. Nathan hadn't said much all night, but I could tell he was still chewing on that moment from 2 weeks ago, when Evan handed over that reservation and stole the room without raising his voice. Evan stood up, holding a small box in one hand. I didn't know he was going to do it like that. I thought he'd just tell them. But he had a whole thing planned. He turned to my mom first and thanked her. Said she taught him what it meant to be generous even when you didn't have much. Then he looked at the rest of the room and said he wanted to share something he'd been working on for the last year. That's when he opened the box and pulled out a stack of flyers. He passed them around. One to each person. Nathan took his like it was junk mail. Until he actually looked at it. It was a promo card for Evie's Grill, a modern fast casual burger place downtown. Full color. Clean design. A real logo. On the back, a photo of the storefront. His storefront. He said, "I opened my own spot 2 months ago. I didn't want to say anything until it was steady. We've already paid off the lease, hired 3 staff, and we're breaking even." Nathan stared at the card like it was written in another language. Sherry leaned over and read it twice. Dylan didn't even look up. Just muttered, "Oh cool," and kept scrolling. My dad asked how he did it. Evan told him. No loans. Just work. Saved every paycheck, reinvested everything into the business. Took classes at night. Learned by doing. He said, "I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to prove it." My mom teared up. My dad clapped him on the shoulder and nodded like he'd just watched something important happen. "Nathan?" He laughed once, short and dry. "Must be nice," he said. "Playing entrepreneur with your mom's help." I didn't even need to respond. Evan did. No help. Not a dime. Just the name on the lease. Then he turned to Dylan and handed him a card too. Said, "If you're ever looking for a job, we're hiring. You'd start at the register like I did." Dylan didn't respond. Just put the card on the coffee table like it was too heavy to hold. Nathan's face went red. Sherry tried to speak but nothing came out. And in that moment everything shifted. The kid they mocked, ignored, laughed at, he was the only one in that room who built something real. And it burned them. The night ended with awkward goodbyes. Nathan barely looked at anyone. Sherry faked a smile so wide it practically cracked. Dylan disappeared first, muttering something about meeting friends. No one even asked him where. Evan helped clean up like he always did, then hugged my mom and told her he'd come by next week to cook dinner for her. Using the new set, of course. She lit up like he'd given her the moon. On the drive home he didn't say much. Just stared out the window like his mind was somewhere else. I asked if he felt better now that it was out. He said, "I didn't do it for them." That was Evan in a sentence. No performance, no drama. He didn't need applause. He just didn't want to hide anymore. But the storm had already started. The next morning I got a call from my mother. She said Nathan had shown up at her door angry. Said I'd set him up. Said Evan was trying to make Dylan look bad in front of the family. My mom told him the truth. Nobody had to do anything to make Dylan look bad. He did that all on his own. Then she told me something else. Apparently Sherry had gone off on a rant in the car. Said Evan must have had some kind of help. That there's no way a kid from a burger joint starts a business like that without someone pulling strings. Nathan didn't defend Evan. But what caught my attention was that he didn't defend Dylan either. Later that week I found out from a friend that Dylan had been fired from his last temp job. Again for showing up late and ghosting a shift. Nathan and Sherry had been covering his rent, his phone, even his credit cards. The same ones Nathan had maxed out and then opened new ones behind Sherry's back. Their whole life was a house of cards. And Evan had walked in and knocked it sideways by just existing. I tried to stay out of it. I really did. But then I got the text. It was from Sherry. Must be nice raising a little show-off. Hope it's worth it when it all crashes down. I showed it to Evan. He read it once and said, "Guess I should invite them to the soft launch of the second location." I blinked. "Second location?" "Yeah," he said. "We've had a good couple of months. Got an offer for a spot across town. Lease is being finalized this week." Nathan had mocked him for flipping burgers. Evan was about to flip the whole script. I didn't expect to see Nathan again so soon. After Sherry's bitter text and Dylan's disappearing act, I figured they'd avoid us for a while. Maybe quietly lick their wounds and regroup. But no, some people don't retreat when they're losing. They double down. It was a Thursday afternoon. The lunch rush at Evan's place had just ended, and I stopped by to drop off some paperwork he needed for the second location. He'd officially signed the lease that morning. I was sitting by the counter, sipping iced tea and watching Evan talk to one of his line cooks about menu updates when the door opened. And there he was, Nathan, alone. No Sherry. No fake smile. Just him standing there in business casual like he'd come straight from a meeting. But his eyes were scanning the place like he didn't believe what he was seeing. Evan noticed him and nodded once. Cool. Then went back to talking to his employee. Nathan walked up to the counter slowly like the floor might crack beneath him. He looked around at the polished space. Digital menu boards. Branded packaging. A steady flow of customers still trickling in. Everything clean, professional and fully real. "This your place?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Evan wiped his hands on a towel and came over. "Yeah." Nathan looked at him for a long time. Then said, "So, you really did all this?" Evan didn't brag. Didn't explain. Just nodded. Nathan picked up a menu and stared at it. Then he did something that caught both of us off guard. He said, "Dylan wants to come work here." Evan blinked. "He said he wants to get his act together. We told him to get a job. He asked if you'd take him on." There it was. The collapse. The confession behind the words. That their golden boy had burned through every last excuse, and now they were reaching out to the kid they used to mock for flipping burgers. Evan looked at me, then back at Nathan. He said I'd give him an interview. Just like anyone else. Nathan nodded once, slowly. That look of pride he always wore, the smugness, the need to one-up, it wasn't there anymore. It had been chipped away piece by piece. I thought he'd say thank you. He didn't. He just left the menu on the counter and walked out. Later that night, Evan and I were locking up when he turned to me and said, "I'll give Dylan a shot if he shows up. But I'm not babysitting him." "You won't have to," I said. "He's not you." Evan nodded and flipped the sign to closed. It wasn't just the end of a workday. It felt like the end of something else too, something that had hovered over us for years. And we weren't done yet. Dylan showed up the next morning half an hour late. He didn't walk in like someone ready to turn his life around. He strolled in with his hoodie half-zipped, smelling like cologne that was doing too much and holding a smoothie. He looked around Evan's restaurant like it was a curiosity exhibit. Like he couldn't quite believe it was real. Evan was already behind the counter, resetting the register and prepping for the lunch rush. He saw Dylan walk in, looked at the clock, then said 2 words. "You're late." No anger. No lecture. Just facts. Dylan gave a half smile and said traffic, but Evan had already turned back to his checklist. That was the tone from the start. No special treatment. No family favors. Evan gave him the same starter sheet he gave every new hire. Tasks, expectations, and a probation period. 3 strikes and you're out. The first week didn't go well. Dylan forgot to restock napkins. Left the freezer door cracked open one night. Missed a shift because he overslept. That earned him his first official warning. And not just a verbal one. Evan logged it and printed it out for him to sign. I asked Evan later if he regretted giving Dylan a shot. He just shook his head. "If I'm gonna do this, I have to run it right. Doesn't matter who he is." Week 2 something shifted. Dylan came in early one morning. He swept the parking lot before anyone else arrived. Started asking questions about how the POS system worked. Watched Evan more closely during rush hour instead of zoning out. By week 3 he was clocking in 5 minutes early. He didn't say much, didn't try to win anyone over. Just kept his head down. Worked, learned, failed. Tried again. It didn't erase everything, but it was something. Nathan and Sherry didn't talk about it. At least not to us. But my mom said they'd gone quiet. No more bragging about Dylan's potential. No more jabs about Evan's little job. Just silence. It was a strange thing watching their pride cave in like that. Sherry couldn't handle it. She showed up at my mom's one Sunday and said Evan must be holding something over Dylan, that it didn't make sense for her son to be working in food service. She said the word like it was an insult. My mom, bless her, told her the truth. Evan offered him something no one else had. A clean slate. That kind of generosity doesn't come from weakness. Comes from strength. Dylan kept working. 60 days in, he earned a permanent spot on the schedule. Evan gave him a black uniform shirt, different from the gray ones the new hires wore. It was small, but it meant something. And Dylan noticed. At Evan's 20th birthday, we had dinner at his place, the original location. The second one was still being renovated. He invited the whole family. I wasn't sure who would show, but they all did. My parents, me, and even Nathan. No Sherry though. She claimed a migraine. I think she just couldn't sit in that room and look around without seeing all the things she didn't believe Evan could do. Nathan didn't say much during dinner. He sat at the end of the table picking at his food, occasionally glancing up like he was still adjusting to the fact that this place, this polished, profitable full-room restaurant, belonged to the quiet kid he used to make fun of. Evan stood up after dessert. He thanked everyone for coming. Then he looked at Dylan. Said, "You've come a long way. Thanks for stepping up." Dylan looked like he didn't know what to do with that. He just nodded, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a keychain. A brushed steel version of Evan's logo, EV Skrill, with the word, Day 1, etched on the back. He said, "I know I wasn't really around. But, thanks for not giving up on me." There were no big speeches. No emotional hugs. Just a quiet exchange. But it hit hard. After everyone left, Nathan stayed behind. He asked Evan if he could talk to him outside. They stood near the alley by the dumpsters where Evan's staff usually took breaks. I watched from the front window, heart pounding. They didn't raise voices. They didn't hug. But after a few minutes, Nathan reached out, awkward, hesitant, and shook Evan's hand. When Evan came back inside, I asked what he said. Evan just shrugged. He said he was wrong. That's all? Evan nodded. That's all I needed. And that was it. My son didn't win with revenge. He didn't humiliate anyone. He didn't post about it online or throw their words back in their faces. He just built something they couldn't ignore. Evan changed everything, not just his own life but the shape of our entire family. And he did it by doing exactly what everyone thought made him small. He showed up. He worked. He stayed silent when others talked. And when it mattered, he spoke loudest of all, with action. The kid they laughed at? He gave them all something to respect. Whether they were ready to admit it or not.